first step in making a circle skirt is figuring out the waist of the circle skirt. So I'm going to stand on a stool so you can see my waist a little better since I am short. Here we go. And here is my natural waist. You can see where it is because that's where I bend. And I don't actually want to wear the skirt that I'm making at my natural waist. I want to wear it here where the skirt I'm currently wearing is sitting. So just take the measuring tape and you are going to wrap it around right where you want the skirt to be worn. That could be at your natural waist, it could be lower, it's personal preference. So I've got a measurement here of 29. You want the tape snug but not tight, because if you and then tighten the tape up to get that smaller measurement, you're going to have to maintain this position the whole time you wear the skirt. So go ahead, let yourself breathe and take that measurement. And then we need to do a little bit of math with that. You're going to take that measurement, which is the circumference of a circle, because it's the circle that your waist is going to go into. You're going to take that measurement and you're going to divide it by 6.28, because that's how you find the radius of a circle when you know the circumference. So go ahead, and I'm going to give you a second to do that math while I get ready to show you how to fold and cut the fabric. Okay, I've got my fabric here, and this is 60-inch wide fabric. The width of your fabric is going to somewhat limit the length of the circle skirt you can make, and you'll see what I mean after I show you how we're folding this up. So first I folded my fabric where the two selvage edges are matched up. And then what I'm going to do is fold my fabric again in half the other way. And the corner I want to work with here to mark is this corner over here where I've got two folds and then it's all folded here. I don't want to work on any of the corners that have any exposed raw edges. So what I'm going to do, and I went ahead and took my yardstick out, with my 29-inch waist measurement, when I do the math, that comes out to 4.617. So I'm going to round that off to 4 5/8, which is actually 4.625, so pretty close. And what I want to do is I want to line my measuring tool, either my tape or in this case like I'm using the yardstick, and I want to line that up right in the corner there, and then I'm just going to mark at that measurement all around my skirt here from the corner. So I'm going to rotate it and mark again. And what this is going to do, that 4 5/8 is my radius, and it's going to help me create this circle on the inside of my skirt for my waist. Okay, now I want to measure from the waist marking down to the length of my skirt. And here is where I was explaining, let me move this so we can get a better view here. Here's where I was explaining that the width of your fabric is going to somewhat limit the length of the skirt you can make. So I cannot make this skirt any longer than 25 inches because that's all that I've got left between my waist marking and the edge of the fabric here. So I'm just going to go ahead and with the ruler I'm going to rotate it around again, and I'm going to be marking at 25 inches so that I can mark the outer circle of my skirt, which is the hem. And then what I want to do is I want to go ahead and connect the dots that I've made so that I've got two smooth curved lines. So there's the curve for my waistline right here. And then I want to connect the dots down here to create my hemline. Once those are connected, you want to go ahead and cut them out. when you've cut that out, then if you unfold it all, it's kind of like magic here, I'll have a big donut shape. And we're going to take this donut shape and we're going to make it into a skirt. So the next thing you need to do with your donut shape is you need to just pick one edge that's going to be the back of your skirt. So you've lined up where you cut your circle and you folded it so it's a half donut basically. And that is where you're going to create the back seam. I prefer to do that on the straight grain of the fabric. So look at your grain lines. And then you will go ahead and you will cut a straight line right up that seam. So now, instead of a donut, I have a big drape. And what I'm going to need to do next is cut out a waistband. So I'm going to take the remaining fabric there that I cut off my circle skirt, and I'm going to be cutting a waistband out of this. And because it's easier to work in smaller amounts and keep them straight, I am going to go with half of my waistband size. Now remember, my waistband is 29 inches. Now to that, I'm going to add 1 inch, and that gives me a 1/2 inch seam allowance on each end of the waistband. And on this one, I want the final waistband to be fairly thin, so I'm only going to make this 2.5 inches wide. Okay, so I have gone ahead and finished the edges of my skirt with an overlock stitch. If you don't have a serger, you can also do this with a regular sewing machine and your zigzag stitch. And I'll leave a link in the description below to show you how to do that. And then I've also gone ahead and I've prepared my waistband. Now what I did was I first folded it in half and then I pressed, and then I fused some interfacing right up against that crease on one side, and then finally I pressed the other raw edge under. So now I've got a prepared waistband that we're going to attach to the skirt later. But before I do that, I need to go ahead and install a zipper on the seam line. So let's see how to do that. Okay, so now that the zipper is all installed, it is time to actually unzip it and go ahead and put in the waistband. So I'm going to take the edge here and I'm going to overlap it by 1/2 inch because that's my seam allowance. And then I'm just going to start pinning it right sides together all the way around the waist of my skirt. Okay, once I have the waistband pinned all the way around my skirt, I just want to stitch that waistband all around the waistline. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you back at the camera to show you how to finish this off. Okay, so I've gone ahead and sewn the waistband to the skirt, and then at the ends of the waistband, I went and folded it back on itself and then sewed it right up next to the zipper there. So now I'm going to turn those ends out. And then on the inside here, we're going to press the seam allowance up and then cover it with the waistband so that all of those raw edges are enclosed. Okay, now that I've got this all pinned, I'm actually going to stitch it on the top side right along the seam line to hide my stitching in the ditch. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I will show you the final step of this. Okay, the last step to finishing this waistband, now that we've sewed and it's all fastened down inside and out, is to add a hook and a loop to this, and this is going to be hand sewing. So I'm going to start with the loop on this end, and I'm going to take my hand sewing needle and I'm just going to, sew that in place. Okay, and once the loop is in place, then on the opposite side I need to sew the hook. So my trick for this, because sometimes when I used to sew them they'd end up too loose, is I actually hook it in and then put the skirt where I want it to end up and use that to figure out the placement of my hook. Okay, so we're all finished. I've sewn on the hook and the loop. We can hook those together to keep the top of the waistband closed. We've got the zipper to keep the bottom part closed. And then the last step to finish this skirt is going to be to hem it. Now let me hold it up here. You see how the hem hangs a little bit unevenly? That's very typical for a circle skirt, and it's because parts of the skirt are hanging on the bias and parts of them are hanging on the straight or even cross grain. So before you actually hem this, you want to do two things. First, you want to go ahead and put this on a hanger, and you want to leave it hanging up somewhere overnight. What that does is it allows all the bias areas, which are generally the areas hanging lower here, it allows all of those areas to settle so that they will end up as long as they're probably going to get on the skirt. You also want to make sure that you mark the hem with the skirt on your body if at all possible. The reason is, and particularly if you have a little bit of a sway back or if you have more curves in the back than you do in the front, your skirt will need to be a little bit longer in the back to go over those curves. So we don't necessarily want to even this skirt out now, even though the hem is all uneven. I'm going to let this hang overnight, and then after that I will even out the hem and then just do a rolled hem. And I'm going to leave a link in the bottom, in the description down here, to another post with information about doing rolled hems, because there's a few different ways to do them. So that has a lot of good information for you.